to Pets Life with Gym Dog, Ireland's first pet resort by Des the Vet. Managed by vets, loved by pets. Daycare, vet care, premium pet food and grooming. Visit at petslife.ie.
Okay, Tuesday morning, good morning to you, and a very good morning to Des Groom as well. Hello, Des.
John, great to be here again. It's a nice sunny day today.
It is, not bad at all.
Too bad at all.
We were just talking about that the other day, just that the weather's coming and everything's going to look nice and rosy in the garden, literally, and all the flowers are going to start coming up. And
you have to mow the lawn soon.
Get your doggies out walking even more.
Dogs out walking, yeah. Exactly.
Absolutely.
Canal Bank in Milltown's lovely at the moment.
Yeah.
See a few flowers starting to, hopefully spring is coming. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, you won't make a gardener, by the way. Are you a gardener?
No, I'm not a gardener. I've no interest in it at all.
No,
I begrudgingly mow the lawn. That's all.
That's about it.
Yeah. Strictly the animals for me.
Okay, animals only. Okay, fair enough. Speaking of animals, there's all sorts of crazy things. Well, not crazy things, good things in a good way. We'll talk about the hippo a little bit later on.
Yeah.
We'll talk about what's happening in Wales regarding greyhound racing as well, coming to an end, or allegedly, or whatever. First things first. What else do you want to talk about?
The DSPCA have a foster day this Saturday. DSPCA have a big headquarters where they do boarding, they do doggy daycare, and they do animal welfare stuff and dog rescue and dog fostering. And they're having a foster day on Saturday between 12 and 2, the main visiting time. Now, you might be able to go earlier or whatever, but you get to see all the dogs they have there and put your name down to foster one. And I love to encourage people to adopt a dog and not to go shopping for one, because we always have high numbers of stray dogs and dogs that are handed in and all the rest of it. Lots of dogs there to be rehomed. And again, folks, if you are considering fostering or rehoming a dog, consider if you're an older person, an older dog would be suitable for you.
Yeah.
If you're an active person, an outdoor person, take a bigger dog that's more active. And do consider Lurchers, Whippets, Greyhounds, and these kind of dogs that aren't fashionable, and they're not typically the ones that are perceived to be the cuddly pet, but there's a lot of them there, and they make great pets. Greyhounds, Whippets, Lurchers, they make great pets, great family dogs. And
when they're young, they're mad as a bag of frogs as well.
Yeah, they're mad and they're hyperactive and they've loads of energy, but they settle and they become very calm as they get older, and they need less exercise than some of the working breeds.
Okay, yeah.
So they're a good one to consider. Whippets, Lurchers, Greyhounds. The thing about Greyhounds, of course, is we have a lot of them in the country after their racing career ends. So I'd love to see them really take off and become popular as a common pet, because it'd be a lovely outlet for the retired racing dog to know that there was, a pipeline or a group of willing a queue, in other words, to adopt these once their racing careers are finished. I'd love to see that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd agree with that one 100%. DSPC, where are their headquarters?
Rathfarnham.
Okay.
Mount Venus, Rathfarnham, and they've a few acres there. Nice place.
And that's where you're going to go to this thing, is it?
That's where you go to this thing. Probably ring up and just check, is there a waiting list or a queue, or do you need to enrol? But for folks, somewhere nice to go on Saturday, especially if it's a fine morning.
Yeah. And if you have the facility to adopt and you have the time to adopt, and there's no point in adopting a dog and you're both working people and you shag off for the day either, is it?
No, unless you have the financial wherewithal to pay for it to go to doggy daycare every day or regularly or whatever
people
it is,
It is trendy.
They do that, and that's good, because you can't leave a dog at home barking in the garden, because nowadays your neighbours might be working from home. So that's an issue. If you're away at work for the day, your dog can't be unaccompanied or alone at home for the day, because if it gets up to mischief or becomes noisy, it'll upset the neighbourhood. So doggy daycare is taken off for that reason. Our doggy daycare now, for instance, their Gym Dog, we open at 7, and we've big numbers of people dropping the dog on the way to the train, on their way to work.
Why do you think there's so many dogs in the pounds at the moment and in the rescue centres? Yeah,
it's a knock-on effect from the COVID-19 epidemic, whereby for some reason an online trend emerged of encouraging people to get a dog.
Because they were working from home, or they were not even working from home, they were stuck at home.
Yeah, it was a big lifestyle change, and everybody forgot that this lifestyle change wasn't going to be permanent. But all sorts of major changes occurred at the time in people's routines and habits in that year of 2020 to 2021. So families that never had a dog before got a dog, and those dogs are now 3 or 4 years of age. And some of those COVID dogs have adapted and become great pets, and others haven't. Maybe if they were in the hands of a family that didn't have a dog before, weren't really experienced in dog ownership, you have behavioural issues, training problems, or just a realisation that as the dog has gotten older that they haven't got the space or the time for it. So the upsurge in strays and the upsurge in overflow in the pounds occurred directly as a result of COVID, and the upsurge in dog ownership, which led to an upsurge, unfortunately, in sometimes unscrupulous dog breeding operations.
Okay, that makes sense.
So huge numbers of puppies.
Yeah.
That was it.
Sense.
The COVID puppy became a phenomenon, and a lot of these COVID puppies turned into unsocialised, badly behaved older dogs.
Okay, that makes sense as well. Speaking of animals and dogs, we're looking at an article there over in Wales at the moment regarding the ban of facing greyhound racing in Wales. Makes no sense, and it should be a huge wake-up call for horse racing. Yeah. Why did they say that? Right.
The reason they say that is because we look at society has changed. We're not a rural, country-based society anymore where people understand animals and the integration of animals into our way of life. We've become an urbanised culture, and that trend has come over from the UK. So the UK now in particular, you have this move towards examining animal sports very closely, and there's a misinformed perception from city people that animal sports are somehow cruel. To my mind, that article there which is saying that banning greyhound racing makes no sense. It makes no sense to ban it.
Yes.
The reason why it makes no sense to ban it is because you cannot get away from the fact that these animals have an instinct and they've been bred to race.
Yes.
And racing is in their blood, it's in their DNA for hundreds of years. And you won't just convert them into cuddly house pets. They have to race. It's their instinct. They love it.
But what happens to these dogs, these greyhounds, when they are finished racing? And what happens to them?
Yeah.
Do they end up in the rescue centres?
So again, you see, it's like everything else. It's not black and white. There's a grey area there. Greyhound racing does need reform.
Right.
There probably needs to be less greyhounds bred. There needs to be a better pipeline for rehoming them after racing and converting them into pets. And there needs to be a greater examination of the welfare end of things at the bottom of the greyhound racing industry where the value isn't there.
Yeah, that makes sense as well.
So exploitation and cruelty can occur right at the bottom. When there's no value left in the dog, if there are too many of them there, and if there isn't a proper rehoming and fostering pipeline into turning them into pets. So this is where the bit of reform comes in. But that doesn't mean you ban racing and you condemn it as cruel, because no amount of political correctness can change the fact that these dogs are not innately house pets. There's hundreds of years of breeding in their DNA towards racing. They need to race. And that should be, it should always be remembered that the primary function of a working dog or a racing dog is to work and to race.
Yeah, I was reading the article, and what it was saying was that the argument is about getting dogs injured when racing, and the guy who's totally against this banning is not alone as a well-known trainer, but he's also a well-known vet as well. Right. So he was actually saying that basically, it's not as bad as people think it is. Dogs are not, it's not like horses or whatever. Horses get injured a lot more than dogs do at dog racing.
Yeah. So again, you see the argument with horses too is they're bred to race. They love racing. Horses who are bred for racing race each other in the field as foals and as yearlings. And the statistics are that just as many horses injure themselves and break bones running around in the field against each other while at play. Just as many injuries occur in a herd natural setting as occur on the racetrack.
Yeah.
Now for dogs too, the same thing. The incidence of active working dogs, collies, Labradors, retrievers, German shepherds, all collies, all these which are working dogs, sheepdogs, when they're in a family pet setting, the incidence of them breaking bones and injuring joints is just as high as a racing dog.
Yeah.
Because working dogs and racing dogs they will race, they will play, and they will injure themselves.
But why do you think there's not just Wales, there's other countries bringing in or banning this as well?
Yeah.
Why?
Because those industries, sports, you call them an industry because they're a commercial enterprise, and they're an industry because the people who are involved in it are professional. They've left themselves open to criticism by not managing their own adoption pipelines and not managing their own welfare issues thoroughly enough.
Okay, do you think as a result of this, what's going to happen in Wales and other countries now are beginning to jump on this bandwagon? Do you think it'll eventually, the subject will become a discussion over here in Ireland?
Yeah, it already is a discussion.
But it's kind of in the back channels at the moment.
I heard it on another radio station, a Dublin-based radio station. Right. And I thought the conversation was very unfair in the sense it was an unfair fight. And I just pictured the scenario, right? A Dublin-based radio station with an urban listenership, right? And it had a very articulate, urban Dublin left wing, trendy liberal TD, versus a Greyhound man from down the country,
right? Okay,
on the topic.
Okay, that says it.
And the Greyhound man was made mincemeat of.
Made mincemeat of,
on air.
Okay. So
unless these conversations are balanced and fair, and they're not framed or presented in a biased way, then.
But aren't people in Ireland going to take note of this, about this Greyhound?
Again, it'll be part of the urban-rural divide.
Yeah.
You'll have the South Dublin clientele who think, oh, it's terrible, oh, it's cruel, oh, the poor dog.
Yeah.
But then you have the informed and the knowledgeable people in the country who've been Greyhound racing once or twice in their lives and understand it and realise that, hey, the dogs love doing it.
Yeah. Okay, we parked that one there. I want to move on to something else as well, which I thought was an interesting thing before we get to some questions. This is a feel-good story. Dublin Zoo's latest hippo settling in beautifully.
Yeah.
And they were amazed because the new hippo, Imani, has actually settled in with the existing hippos that are there, Heidi, and it's worked out perfectly.
Yeah, it's great. And it's worth talking about it because with the spring coming, the zoo will be welcoming, dying and looking forward to welcoming new visitors again as they emerge out of the winter,
Yeah, it's really good.
To get an extra hippo in there is fantastic because hippos are a herd animal. They live in clusters of between 30 and 100 beasts along the water banks and the lakes and the river banks in Africa. So to have an extra one there is great because... they're sociable animals. Two females together also is great.
Yeah.
Because typically it's the females that cluster in these herds. They get on well with each other.
Right, okay.
And they have great longevity. They're mature from about 20 years of age. The females stop growing around 20. They live to upwards of 50 to 60 years old. Which is fantastic.
Good. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah. Now, downside of it is there isn't a male there. Are they going to breed from either of these females? They might. You wouldn't import a male just for breeding purposes, but there might be.
And would the male rock the boat a bit?
He would.
Yeah,
he would. So a male with two female, he'd be bored. He'd bully them. The male hippo is actually the very dominant, and you have a bull. So in these hippo herds, for instance, in the wild, you'll have one dominant alpha bull, and he'll have upwards of 30 cows.
Yeah.
And there'll be the young male adolescents that'll be on the fringes of that herd.
Yeah.
So very similar to the same type of relationship or dynamic as you'd have in herds of buffalo or herds of cattle.
Okay, well, you can check the Dublin Zoo out on that one. Imani is the latest addition to the hippo colony, or whatever they call them. What's a herd of hippos called? A herd of hippos?
Good question. They're a herd.
They're a herd. Okay, so a herd of hippos. And I've been there a few times over the last couple of years, so I have to say it's a terrific day out if you haven't gone to Dublin Zoo, or it's one of those things you should absolutely make it a regular thing to do, and it's good fun. It really is good crack as well. Okay, some questions for you. I have a nervous cavalier. It hears any noise at all. When it hears any noise at all out walking, he's pulling me up to go home. Just gets totally stressed. Just wondering if there was anything to help him, or such thing as earplugs or something like that, says Liam. Or how would you, a stressed out cavaliers would be a nervous dog anyway.
Cavies are nervous. They're timid little dogs. Loads and loads of socialisation and reassurance. But he might be a candidate for Nutricam. What exactly does this listener say? Does he think the dog is afraid of?
Okay, I have a very nervous cavalier. It hears any noise at all out walking, he pulls up and he wants to just turn around and go home or comes towards me. So he gets very frightened. Any noise, reacting to noise.
Yeah, so what you do there is conditioning. You train, have treats in your hand and give treats, give something nice, so that the association with the noise or the crowded situation is a positive association. So that'll cancel out the fear a little if he begins to understand that he's going to sit calmly and get a treat and wait until the disruption or commotion has passed.
Okay, right now, have a listen to this one. I'm going to show you a picture, but first of all, I'm going to read it out to you.
Okay.
Clodagh went to a lot of detail with this one, so bear with me. Hi, Des. I have doggy skin problem. Going on about 6 months now. You notice from the two pictures, he has a black type scab on his back. The groomer thought it may be a flea bite, so I brought him to the vet, and they said it was age warts. Age warts?
Yeah.
I think he does have a couple of warts, but these do not look like them. They're different. If you have it was a young vet, didn't really overly look okay. But he is a cavapoo, 11 years of age, never had any skin issues whatsoever. Anyway, as time goes on, the scab loses in its hair, and I can brush it out again. And definitely looks like skin irritation of sorts to me. There's 2 on his back and 1 on his tail. He does a lot of rubbing off the couch, and I think it's itchy for him. He doesn't like me to touch them as well. He grimaces, and I'm going to show you.
Yeah, good.
There we go. 2 black thingies there. You want me to zoom in on that?
Yeah, okay, so the good news is they don't really look like tumours.
Okay.
And they're quite swollen.
Yeah.
And you have hyperpigmentation there, and you have keratosis, meaning there's a change in colour of the skin and there's thickening of the skin cells. Collobomas or subepidermal cysts. My recommendation would be remove those and then follow up with a course of antibiotics. Okay,
so there you go. That's the good news, I suppose. And look, if in doubt, just look for the relevant stuff if you need to.
So older dogs, when the first vet mentioned age-related warts, the story there is that from about 10, 11 years of age onwards, the dog's natural levels of omega-3 and omega-6 drop, and their liver function isn't as good at processing and putting out the good chemicals and the good minerals onto the skin. So their skin dries out.
Okay.
So older dogs get dry skin. They're more prone to developing warts and skin infections because of an omega-3 and omega-6 deficiency. So for these dogs like that, he looks to have really dried out and scaly skin.
Okay.
Needs to go on omega-3 and omega-6 supplements. So into the vet and have a chat about supplements and a possible a change of diet and an increase and supplements added, an addition of supplements.
You opened the conversation there when looking at the picture saying the good news is it doesn't look like a possibility of it. Now that's just based on a picture that we got in here. What would the symptom be if it was a tumour?
Cavapoos and cockapoos like that, they're prone to skin cancers, mast cells, and melanomas.
Okay.
There'd be 2.
Okay. But if what would the look be different?
Angrier.
Right.
Angrier. Inflamed. There'd be a reddening.
Right.
Around the area. There'd be some hair loss.
Right.
Not just the scaliness and scabbiness and the blackening.
Yeah, okay. So that's what we're thinking at the moment. It's not that, so that's okay. But do go back to your vet. Get them removed.
They need to be removed, yeah.
It doesn't
and
say
then follow up with a change of diet and addition of supplements.
Okay. Okay. Can you ask Des about a recent article in The Guardian UK, I presume, about flea treatments being an environmental hazard? A recent study from the University of Sussex confirms flea treatment drugs are contaminating the natural world. Birds line their nests in the animal hair, which then when tested in traces of fipronil, and then it goes on to mention other ones, which is contained in the flea treatment drugs. Nest mortality has apparently increased, as these are very dangerous to birds.
Yeah, this is true.
Okay.
Now, I follow some of the abstracts or the summaries from the scientific journals.
I'll send this on to you, actually.
Yeah.
There's a link.
So this starts at the level of scientific research, and the first kind of red flags about this stuff started to appear a year or 2 ago in scientific journals where research was done by environmental scientists on water. And the first one was around the River Thames.
Okay.
And they found high incidences of deformities in fishes.
Okay.
And high levels of them. They're putting it down to trace levels of fipronil, which is a pet flea treatment.
Okay.
That had been found its way into the watercourse.
Right.
So I've begun to grapple, to be honest, with this issue in my own head.
Okay.
Because over the last number of years, and you've heard me say this, with the amount of dogs that live indoors, dogs and cats, I'm advising people to use antiparasitics monthly.
Because as in spot-ons and stuff like that?
Spot-ons. Because of the human health risks.
Okay, right.
That you can't have mange mites and fleas and all the rest of it inside in your bed. And people in spite of all the recommendations, they'll have the dog on the bed.
How do you put the spot on, by the way?
You just put it on in the back of the neck and it soaks into the skin.
Yeah.
And as you do with your cat.
Yeah.
And then it goes into the bloodstream. But the difficulty being then the traces of the chemical are secreted in the urine of the animal.
Right.
And finding their way into the water courses.
Yeah.
And a level of pollution occurring. Okay. So we're using these chemicals because of humanisation and domestication of pets, and because of human health, public safety issues. We're having to make sure that our pets are not bringing bugs into the houses, right, into our homes. But as a knock-on effect of that, there's a potential environmental hazard, a potential environmental problem coming down the tracks for us. So what's going to happen after a while, right, for the moment, my recommendations about how and when to use these antiparasitics is not going to change.
Okay.
But in the very near future, we're going to be in a scenario whereby we're probably going to move away from as frequent usage of these antiparasitics.
Yeah.
And we're going to move towards a system of testing the dogs and cats for parasites before we treat them.
Okay, thanks, Charlie and Cara there. This is one in from Martin, who's listening to us in Carlow. Thanks, Martin. I've dogs all my life, tried so many dog pounds applying, never got any, and some dogs are still on site 3 weeks after me checking again. Later reason for this is probably one of the reasons for overcrowding, because of strict criteria. Yeah. No reply. We sent in, spent thousands on buying dogs over the years. German Shepherd, Schnauzers, crossbreeds, etc., says Martin. The problem is that the criteria is so strict.
Yeah, they're right.
They're right too, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm going to throw criticism out there too. If I have any listeners who are working in the fostering and the rehoming and animal welfare industry, right, they need to drop the bar, drop their criteria a little, and they need to change their criteria. So they're inclined to go out and do these house inspections, and they're inclined to knock people who want to foster a pet on the basis of the environment where the person lives in, right? And it's a bias against people who live in crowded settings, and it also adversely impacts on low-income people and older people who live alone in smaller houses with less space. What they should be actually doing is they should be judging the character and the lifestyle of the person, not just where they live.
That makes sense as well.
In terms of who's a suitable candidate to own a pet. Yeah. And do give the pets a chance to go out into these new homes.
And don't forget, in the different environmental homes, just because you might be living even in an apartment or something, it doesn't mean you can't have a small dog.
I see lots of people living in crowded and small houses and living in apartments, and they make great dog owners and great pet owners because they have the lifestyle and the inclination and the attitude to be good pet owners. So don't judge them by where they live. Judge them by their interest and their enthusiasm.
Okay, one quick question. Hi, I'm looking into Greyhounds to get one.
Brilliant.
Where would I be able to let it run, as I am not sure they could be let loose to get their energy out, says Carissa.
Yes, you're right. They need a burst. I'm always saying this to people. And
that's the problem with people probably not taking on Greyhounds.
Yeah, one of the things is there's a conception there. They think that the dog needs loads of exercise, but what they actually need is a couple of bursts in the day.
Okay.
So where you can go where's a great place is inside the Curragh Racecourse in the afternoons.
Right.
When the horses have finished exercising. So inside the racecourse is a really well-fenced place. Also as well, canal banks can be good because they're secured on both sides.
Okay, fair enough. A great way to wrap up as well. Thanks for that. We might look into more of that over the next week or so. Des, thanks for dropping in.
Brilliant, thanks John.
It's a pet's life with Gym Dog, Ireland's first pet resort by Des the Vet. Managed by vets, loved by pets. Daycare, vet care, premium pet food and grooming. Visit at petslife.ie.